Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss a chart produced by the Institute for Fiscal Studies. It claims that they have modelled the spending plans of Labour, the Liberal Democrats and for some reason the Conservatives twice. The Liberal Democrats are making a great deal of the chart because it appears to show that their plans would boost the incomes of the lowest deciles more than anyone else. In fact, what's remarkable is that it shows that both the Conservatives and particularly Labour would actually make the lowest decile worse off. And in Labour's case, all deciles worse off. But this doesn't make sense. So I thought this odd myself. Then I saw a little bit of analysis from Paul Mason, a former economics editor at the BBC, who also spotted a few flaws in the model. But first, let's look at the ones which are so obvious that even I saw them. So let's focus in on the fact that this graph really clearly shows the lowest decile being worse off under Labour's plans. So now let's look at some of Labour's policies. First of all, minimum wage. Right now, the minimum wage, or the living wage, because the Tories changed the name, is in bands according to age. So if you're 21 years of age or over, you must by law be paid at least £11.44 an hour. But that rate goes down as low as £6.40 if you're under 18. One of Labour's policies is to get rid of these bands. There will be a single rate for everyone. That means everyone under the age of 21, when this policy comes into force, would get a boost to their pay. Well, that is obviously a net positive to the incomes of the lowest decile, isn't it? It's literally an increase in the legal minimum wage for these people. Then there's another minimum wage policy from Labour. It is that the guidance for setting rates will change. The guidance will have to take account of the real cost of living. This will also have the effect of boosting the minimum wage above the levels it would naturally rise under the current system. Well, that's also a net positive to the incomes of the lowest decile. Then there's statutory sick pay. Currently, you need to be earning above a certain amount to even qualify for statutory sick pay, and you only have a right to it if you're sick for like more than 3 days. Labour have got plans to provide the benefit for all workers and for it to begin from day one. So what would that do to the incomes of the lowest decile? Well, that would also be a net positive. How could it not be? Then there's the policy on 0-hour contracts. Now, the manifesto policy is not quite as firm as people wanted it at first, but it still represents a significant restriction on the use of 0 hours contracts. How does that impact those on the lowest decile? Again, it can only be net positive. What about fire and rehire? That's to be banned as well. This practice is used to fire workers and then bring them back on either worse pay or conditions or both. So abolishing that practice is also an obvious boost to the income of the lowest decile. Essentially, Labour have got a whole series of policies which are an obvious net boost to the pay of the lowest decile. Other deciles as well, but let's keep this simple. Now, in order for this chart from the IFS to be correct, because remember it shows a net negative, there must be some Labour policies which would counteract all that to punish these incomes. But what? Where is it? Where are these policies? You can hunt through the manifesto as much as you like, I invite you to. You won't find them. So how is it possible to have a whole series of policies which are obviously going to boost the incomes of the lowest earners, and yet the IFS says that Labour's policies are a net negative to incomes from this group? Well, this is where Paul Mason comes in, because you're going to say to me, Phil, look, you're not very bright, are you? These are economists, right? They're independent economists. Absolutely, yes. Paul Mason is a very vocal Labour advocate and, as I said, former economics editor. He spotted the reasoning of the IFS for their calculations. In a nutshell, what the IFS have done is to say, well, we've seen policies very similar to this being applied before, not in this country, elsewhere. And we've noticed that it's tended to result in a chain reaction of bosses essentially taking the money via some other avenue. So you make them give money with one hand, but then they'll just take it with the other, so it doesn't actually do anything. But you think, but how's that possible? Because they're literally boosting statutory pay? Well, guess which country they looked to when working on their model? the United States of America, a country with very weak employment rights and very poor union membership. Mason argues that deciding that bosses in the UK will just cut wages to compensate for these new rules is not realistic in the regulatory and union framework of the UK. Indeed, I would add, it's worth noting, we needn't even compare union participation and workers' rights in the UK with the US as they are now, because Labour are strengthening both, including repealing a raft of Tory anti-strike legislation. So what the Institute for Fiscal Studies have done is to decide that a load of Labour policies, which are obviously going to boost the incomes of especially the lower earners, are somehow going to be counteracted just because similar schemes have been in America. But there is no reasoning in their methodology as to how this could happen within the UK's current framework, much less the stronger framework which Labour are promising in their manifesto. So essentially, the model is highly suspect. Put it this way, in a few years' time, the graph of actual increases to incomes for various deciles is certainly going to be higher at the lower end of this chart than this one shows. Simply not feasible to have a load of policies which are obviously going to boost the incomes of particularly the lowest decile work out as a net negative because they wanted to compare us with the G7 country with the weakest labour laws. And this acts as an interesting lesson. The Institute for Fiscal Studies are, of course, independent. They're no mugs as well, but all mathematical models make assumptions, and those assumptions may be valid or not according to the viewpoints of the people making them. Of course, I'm not an economist. If anyone thinks they can work out how the Labour policies I've outlined could do anything other than boost the pay of the lowest deciles, be my guest to point it out. But I think you may find it challenging. And then once you accept that the IFS are probably making invalid assumptions in their model, at that point it cannot even be said that Labour's plans wouldn't boost pay even more than the Lib Dems. But let's come to that. So after all, I'm perfectly prepared to believe that the Lib Dems, because, not being a party who had to prepare a manifesto for government, but simply for opposition, they could announce plans which, as long as they sort of add up, may do the job better economically, even if it wouldn't be politically possible if they were in government. That's possible. So let's look through the Lib Dem manifesto. Not really seeing too many policies that would do this. So according to the Lib Dems' own document, because when the chart came out, obviously they've shared it everywhere. I would, wouldn't you? I don't blame them in the slightest. But they're going, oh, this is brilliant. Look, we're the party that's going to do the best for lower earners. But the only policy they could cite as a reason for it is a discount on energy bills for the most vulnerable. Now, Labour have made no mention of extra discounts, the ones other than above and beyond the ones that already exist. So we can certainly count that as an extra to Labour's offer, right? Put that to one side. But that appears to be it as an extra. Now, I have looked through the Lib Dem manifesto. There are some crossovers in terms of the others as well. In terms of those crossovers, the Lib Dems do talk about sick pay seeming to apply to everyone, but they don't say from day one. So that one is still weaker than Labour's. They also call for a genuine living wage, so I will say that that will be worth the same as Labour's. Although they don't say it will apply equally to everyone. So although they suggest that the guidance should be changed so it becomes a genuine living wage, just like Labour, they don't say that all age groups should have the same. So it's still weaker. They have a policy to scale back the long-term use of zero-hour contracts. However, it's just over a long term. So the Lib Dem policy is these things probably shouldn't apply after 12 months, whereas Labour's position is they probably shouldn't apply at all, but there might be some situations where they do. So that's weaker than Labour's as well. There's nothing on fire and rehire at all. Now, and that's it. I couldn't find anything else. So, I mean, I'm not an economist. I can't model an actual comparison. I can't show you the actual numbers should be if we used a different set of assumptions. But it's hard to see how the Lib Dems actually boost the incomes of the lowest decile more than Labour on the strength of an energy discount being worth more than all of the income boosting policies of Labour put together. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.